"We're moving in tomorrow. Your dad said it's fine." That's what my stepmother told me at 11:47 p.m., the very first night I slept in the beach house I'd spent 12 years saving for. $4.8 million. Every penny mine. And before I could even respond, she added, "If you don't like it, you can find somewhere else." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone. But I smiled. Because I knew exactly what I was going to prepare for their arrival. What Victoria didn't know was that her phone call wasn't just rude. It was the last mistake she'd ever make under the Beckett name. And the surprise I prepared? It took 220 people, one gala stage, and a single manila envelope to deliver. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. My name is Bonnie Beckett. I'm 34 years old and I live in Charleston, South Carolina. Now, let me take you back to March 2025, the week I quit my job and thought I was finally free. My mother died when I was 17. Ovarian cancer, diagnosed in April, gone by September. 5 months. That's all the warning I got before the person who loved me most in this world simply wasn't in it anymore. My father, Gerald Beckett, was a well-respected real estate attorney in Charleston's low-country legal circle. He grieved the only way he knew how, by working until he couldn't feel anything. 2 years later, he married Victoria Hale. At first, she was warm, attentive. She brought homemade lemon bars to Sunday dinners and called me sweetheart, with what I genuinely believed was sincerity. But 6 months after the wedding, the lemon bars stopped, and so did the sweetness. It started small. Victoria suggested I move out of my childhood bedroom, the one with the window seat my mother had built, so Paige, her daughter from a previous marriage, could have a proper dressing room. I looked at my father, waiting for him to say something. He squeezed my shoulder. "It's just a room, kiddo." It was never just a room. By Christmas 2011, I wasn't in the family photo. Victoria positioned everyone in front of the fireplace and somehow there was no space left when I walked in. "Oh," she said, adjusting Paige's collar. "I thought you said you didn't want to be in it." I paid for my own college. Full scholarship to the College of Charleston, plus 2 part-time jobs, one at a bookstore, and one tutoring statistics. Paige went to a private university in Savannah, tuition fully covered by my father. When I once asked him why the difference, he looked confused. "Victoria said you preferred being independent." Her favorite phrase, "I'm not being mean, I'm being practical." She used that line every single time she cut me out of something, and for 15 years, I let her. Here's the thing about being invisible inside your own family. It gives you an extraordinary amount of privacy. After graduating summa cum laude in finance, I took a junior analyst position at Meridian Strategy Group, a boutique consulting firm in downtown Charleston. Within 3 years, I was leading client engagements. Within 7, I was a senior strategy consultant managing restructuring projects for companies with revenues north of $200 million. By the time I left, my base salary plus performance bonuses totaled roughly $340,000 a year. Victoria never knew. She never asked. At family dinners, the ones I was invited to, which grew fewer each year, she'd wave her hand when my work came up. "Bonnie does something with spreadsheets." Then she'd turn to Paige. "Tell them about your new marketing campaign, sweetheart. Paige is the successful one." I let her believe that. I let all of them believe it. Starting in 2013, I funneled every dollar I didn't need into index funds and 2 rental properties, a duplex in West Ashley and a townhouse near the medical university. I lived modestly. I drove a 7-year-old Honda. I wore clothes from Target to Thanksgiving dinners at my father's house, while Victoria showed off a new Cartier bracelet each year. By March 2025, my net worth sat at approximately $5.2 million. Not a soul in my family had any idea. The only person who knew everything was Marcus Trent, my attorney since 2019, a sharp-eyed specialist in real estate law and financial fraud. It was Marcus who first flagged something strange in July 2024 while reviewing my father's property records for an unrelated inheritance question. "There's a transfer deed for the Mount Pleasant house," he told me. "Gerald's signature on it looks off. I'm saving a notarized copy, just in case." I thanked him. I filed it away. I wasn't ready to fight. Not yet. By February 2025, my body made the decision my mind had been postponing for years. I stopped sleeping. Not the Instagram kind. Not, "Oh, I only got 5 hours." I mean, I would lie in bed staring at the ceiling fan for entire nights, my brain cycling through client deliverables and risk models until my chest felt like someone was standing on it. My doctor, a no-nonsense internist named Dr. Priya Langford, sat me down after my blood work came back showing cortisol levels she described as alarming. She told me to take at least 6 months off. No negotiations. I submitted my resignation on February 28th. My managing partner, Martin Collier, shook my hand and said, "The door's always open when you're ready, Bonnie." I walked out of the office carrying a single box, and for the first time in a decade, I didn't know what to do next. Then I remembered my mother. She used to talk about a little house by the ocean. Nothing fancy, just somewhere with a porch and the sound of waves. She said she'd buy it when she retired. She never retired. I found the listing on a Thursday afternoon. Sullivan's Island, just 20 minutes from Charleston. 6 bedrooms, whitewashed cedar siding, a wraparound porch that faced the Atlantic. 4,200 square feet. Listed at $4.8 million. I called Marcus. I called my mortgage broker. I put down 20%, $960,000, on March 5th and closed on March 21st. I moved in on March 22nd, a Saturday. That first night, I sat on the porch with a glass of wine, listening to waves break against the shore, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt like I belonged somewhere. I didn't tell anyone in my family, but Paige saw an Instagram story from a mutual friend who'd tagged Sullivan's Island and recognized me in the background. She told Victoria, and that night, my phone rang. 11:47 p.m. Victoria's number glowing on my screen. I hadn't answered a call from her in 3 months, but something about that first night in the house, the wine, the waves, the foolish feeling that maybe things could be different, made me pick up. "Paige told me about your little beach house," Victoria said. No hello. No congratulations. Her voice had that clipped, organizing tone she used when rearranging furniture or rearranging people's lives. How nice. "Listen, your father and I need a change of scenery. The city's been exhausting. We're moving in tomorrow. Your dad said it's fine." I was silent for 5 seconds. She filled them. "The master bedroom, obviously. Paige will take the room with the ocean view. You can have the one in the back. It's small, but you're used to small." My free hand gripped the porch railing. Did Dad actually say that? Can I talk to him? He's sleeping. Don't wake him, you know his heart. And honestly, Bonnie, if you don't like it, you can find somewhere else. It's not like you can't afford a motel. My hands were trembling. My jaw was locked. But my voice came out steady, almost gentle. "Sure, Victoria. I'll prepare everything for your arrival." She hung up without saying goodbye. She never said goodbye. I sat in the dark for 20 minutes, staring at the ocean I couldn't see. Then I called my father. It was 12:15 a.m. He picked up on the second ring, wide awake. "Sweetheart," he said, "I didn't say any of that. Victoria told me you invited us down for the weekend." That's when it clicked. The same way it must have clicked for Marcus 8 months earlier, staring at a signature that didn't match. If Victoria could forge my father's words to my face, forging his name on a piece of paper was nothing. I didn't sleep that night, but for the first time in 15 years, I wasn't sad. I was clear. At 7 the next morning, I called Marcus Trent. "The notarized copy of the Mount Pleasant transfer deed," I said. "The one with the signature that looked off. I need to see it. Today." Marcus didn't ask why. He'd known me long enough to recognize the shift. By 9:30 a.m., the documents arrived in my encrypted email. A scanned copy of a transfer deed dated April 12, 2024, conveying my father's family home in Mount Pleasant, valued at $1.2 million, to an entity called Hale Premier Properties, LLC. I'd never heard of it. Neither, I was certain, had my father. I pulled up the South Carolina Secretary of State's business registry. Hale Premier Properties, LLC had been registered in November 2022. Sole member, Victoria R. Hale. No other officers. No other names. Then I did what 12 years of consulting had trained me to do. I compared signatures. I pulled Gerald Beckett's signature from the transfer deed and laid it beside his signatures on his will, his medical power of attorney, and a birthday card he'd sent me in 2023. The differences were immediate. The capital G in Gerald was missing its distinctive loop. The pen pressure was uneven. Heavy at the start, light at the finish. The hallmark of someone drawing a shape rather than writing a name. Marcus confirmed what I already knew. This isn't a sloppy day. This is a simulated forgery. But we need a certified expert to make it hold. He recommended Patricia Sloan, a forensic document examiner accredited by the American Board of Forensic Document Examiners. She'd testified in over 40 federal cases. If she said the signature was forged, no court in South Carolina would argue. There's something else, Marcus said. I found 3 withdrawals from Gerald's IRA, totaling $380,000, routed to an account at Coastal Heritage Bank under the name V. Hale. We'll need a subpoena for the full statements. I stared at the screen. This wasn't family drama anymore. This was a felony. They arrived at 10 the next morning, 2 black SUVs packed to the roof with luggage, decorative pillows, and what appeared to be an entire set of monogrammed bath towels. Victoria stepped out first, designer sunglasses pushed up into her platinum hair, scanning the property the way a buyer surveys a foreclosure. Not bad, she said, for a starter home. A starter home, 4,200 square feet, $4.8 million. She walked straight to the master bedroom as if she'd already memorized the floor plan. Within an hour, my clothes were in a pile on the hallway floor, and her garment bags hung in my closet. Paige took the room with the ocean view. I was directed to the smallest room on the first floor. The one originally meant to be a linen storage area. In my own house. My father trailed behind them, carrying a single duffel bag, looking like a man who'd been loaded into the wrong car. He caught my eye in the hallway and mouthed, "I'm sorry." I shook my head slightly. Not yet. That evening, Victoria invited 3 couples from her social circle for dinner, on no notice, with groceries I'd bought. She toured them through every room, her hand sweeping across the open kitchen like a game show host. Gerald always wanted a beach house, she told them, beaming. So I made it happen. Not one person at that table knew I owned the house. Not one person asked. I washed the dishes. I smiled. And at 9:47 p.m., my phone vibrated with an email from Marcus. Patricia Sloan had completed her preliminary examination. Her finding, the signature on the Mount Pleasant deed was, quote, highly likely to be a simulation forgery. I dried the last glass, set it on the shelf, and went to my tiny room. At 11, when the house was quiet, a second email arrived from Marcus. The subject line read, "Call me first thing tomorrow. This is bigger than we thought." I waited until 6:45 a.m., then slipped out the back door and walked down to the beach. The tide was low, the sand still dark with moisture. I called Marcus from the waterline, where the waves would cover my voice. "The IRA withdrawals were just the start," he said. She opened a supplementary credit card under Gerald's name, his social security number, his credit history, her as authorized user. Current balance, $47,000. Charges include a luxury spa retreat in Hilton Head, 2 Chanel handbags, a first-class flight to New York, none of which Gerald has any record of approving. I closed my eyes. The ocean roared in front of me. "And there's a third account," Marcus continued. "A savings account titled V. Hale Trust at the same bank, $215,000. Source, transfers from their joint household account, categorized as household expenses. I did the math standing there with salt water soaking through my sneakers. The Mount Pleasant house, $1.2 million. The IRA, $380,000. The credit card, $47,000. The trust account, $215,000. Total, approximately $1.842 million, stripped from my father without his knowledge while he recovered from a mild heart attack and trusted his wife to manage the household. That same afternoon, Patricia Sloan filed her official report. Report number PS 20250087. Her conclusion was unambiguous. The signature on the April 12th transfer deed was a simulated forgery, assessed at the highest probability level the discipline recognizes. We're looking at forgery in the first degree and exploitation of a vulnerable adult, Marcus said. Both felonies under South Carolina Code. What do you want to do? If I report it now? Victoria gets arrested. Gerald gets blindsided. The whole city knows by dinner. And if there's another way? Marcus paused. The Low Country Bar Association's annual charity gala is June 14th. Victoria's being honored, Philanthropist of the Year. If any of that stolen money flowed into the foundation, the award is built on fraud. He let the implication hang. You want to end this in a police station, or on the stage she built for herself? I knew the answer before he finished the question. 84 days. That's what I had between March 23rd and June 14th. The night of the gala. I broke the plan into 3 phases. Phase 1, March through April. Compile every piece of evidence into a file that could withstand scrutiny from a judge, a journalist, or a room full of lawyers. Phase 2, May. Protect my father. Transfer oversight of his finances to an independent fiduciary. Get his health stabilized, and prepare him for what was coming. Phase 3, the first 2 weeks of June. Coordinate the reveal at the one event Victoria cared about more than anything on earth. Marcus filed the subpoena request with Charleston County Court on March 28th. Estimated turnaround, 30 to 45 days. Patricia Sloan was already working on her full forensic comparison. The pieces were moving, but I needed one more person. Someone whose credibility Victoria couldn't dismiss and whose platform could outlast a single evening. I called Della Fairchild. Della was 52, a senior editor at the Charleston Society Review, the magazine that chronicled every gala, fundraiser, and garden party in Low Country high society. More importantly, she had been my mother's college roommate. They'd stayed close until the end. Della was one of the last people to visit my mother in hospice. When I told her what I'd found, the line went quiet for a long time. Then Della said, "I've had doubts about Victoria for years. She donates big but never lets anyone see the books. Every time I pitched an audit story, my publisher killed it. Too many advertisers in her circle." Della agreed to attend the gala as a credentialed member of the press. If the evidence held, she would publish a full investigative piece in the Charleston Society Review, a publication with 85,000 readers among the Low Country elite. "One condition," she said. "Every document gets verified independently before I write a word." I wouldn't have it any other way. Living with Victoria in the beach house for those weeks was like sharing a cage with someone who didn't know the lock was already broken. April settled in, and so did she. She changed the locks on the master bedroom, my master bedroom, without asking. She hired a decorator to redo the living room in what she called coastal chic: new throw pillows, a driftwood coffee table, a $6,000 linen sectional. The invoice for $12,000 arrived in my mailbox with a sticky note. "Bonnie, take care of this. XOV. I paid it. I needed her comfortable. I needed her careless." Every Friday, she hosted what she called sunset socials, 5 or 6 couples from her Charleston circle, drinking my wine on my porch, listening to Victoria narrate her life as though she'd built it from scratch. I overheard her tell a woman in a cashmere wrap, "Bonnie is going through a phase, quit her little job, living off savings. We're here to keep an eye on her, really." The woman glanced at me with pity. I refilled her glass. My father pulled me aside one evening in the kitchen. "Are you okay, sweetheart? Victoria says you've been stressed. That you're not handling the career change well. I'm fine, Dad. Better than fine. He studied my face but didn't push. Gerald Beckett had spent 63 years trusting the wrong people to tell him the truth about the people he loved. One afternoon, while Victoria was at a spa appointment, I picked up the iPad she'd left on the kitchen counter. Her browser history was still open. The most recent search: how to add name to property deed South Carolina. She wasn't just visiting, she was planning to put her name on my house. That evening, Marcus called. Subpoena's been approved, bank statements in 2 weeks. He hesitated. But Bonnie, there's another account we haven't seen yet. The Coastal Heritage Bank statements arrived in Marcus's office on the first Monday of May, sealed in a courier envelope marked confidential. Court order enclosed. He called me at noon. I sat in my car in the Sullivan's Island public parking lot, the only place I could be certain Victoria wouldn't overhear. The V. Hale account matches what we expected. $380,000 from Gerald's IRA, deposited in 4 installments between January and October 2024. Marcus said. The credit card we already knew about. $47,000. You said there was another one. There is. A savings account titled V. Hale Trust. Balance as of last month, $215,000. All of it transferred from the joint household checking account Gerald shares with Victoria. Each withdrawal listed as household expenses: groceries, maintenance, utilities. Except it all went to this separate account. I stared through the windshield at the marsh grass bending in the wind. Total damage? $1.2 million for the house, $380 from the IRA, $47 on the card, $215 in the trust account. Grand total, approximately $1.842 million. He let that number sit. Marcus, if I tell my father now, he'll confront her. He won't be able to help it. And that could wreck the gala plan. Or worse, his heart. I know. But he needs to hear it before that night. He needs to stand up on that stage knowing the full truth, and he needs to sign an affidavit confirming he never authorized any of it. We settled on June 1st, 13 days before the gala. Early enough for Gerald to prepare. Late enough that Victoria wouldn't have time to build a counter-narrative. That same week, Patricia Sloan sent an addendum to her report. The handwriting in the forged signature on the Mount Pleasant deed was consistent with the handwriting on the fraudulent credit card application. Same person, same pen habits, same crime. June 1st, a Sunday. I woke before dawn and watched the sky turn from charcoal to pale gold through my tiny first-floor window. Victoria wouldn't be up until 9. She never rose early on weekends. I had a narrow window. I found my father on the porch at 5:45 a.m., sitting with a cup of coffee he'd made himself, watching the pelicans glide over the breakers. "Walk with me?" I said. We took the boardwalk down to the beach. The sand was cool under our feet. I waited until we were far enough from the house that even shouting wouldn't reach. Then I opened the folder. I showed him the transfer deed, the forensic report, the bank statements, all 3 accounts. I showed him the LLC registration for Hale Premier Properties, filed in his wife's maiden name. I laid it out the way I'd lay out a client presentation. Facts first, implications second, questions at the end. Gerald read every page. His hands trembled. A vein in his temple pulsed. For 3 full minutes, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the ocean pulling at the shore. "I didn't sign this," he said finally, his voice barely audible above the waves. "I've never heard of this company. I didn't authorize any of these transfers." He pressed his palms against his eyes. When he lowered them, they were red. "I'm sorry, Bonnie. God, I'm so sorry. I should have protected you." "You didn't know, Dad." She made sure you didn't know. Gerald agreed to everything. The affidavit, the gala, the silence, until June 14th. Marcus notarized his sworn statement 2 days later at his downtown office with a certified witness present. As we walked back to the house that morning, my father stopped at the bottom of the boardwalk stairs. He pulled me into a hug, the first in 8 years, and he whispered so quietly I almost missed it, "Your mother would be proud." I didn't know yet that my mother's voice would reach me one more time before this was over, in a way I never could have predicted. 13 days. Victoria spent every one of them preparing for the night she believed would crown her legacy. She hired a personal stylist, $3,500 for a single consultation. She ordered a custom champagne-colored gown from a boutique on King Street, $8,200, fitted twice, hemmed to the millimeter. Every evening after dinner, she stood in front of the master bedroom mirror and rehearsed her acceptance speech, gesturing to an invisible audience with the practiced grace of someone who'd been performing generosity her entire life. On June 8th, she told me I was expected at the gala. "For appearances," she said, "you'll sit in the back, obviously, but I need the family there. It looks better for the photos." She paused, then added, "Wear something simple. This isn't your night." "Of course, Victoria. I wouldn't dream of stealing your spotlight." Behind the scenes, every gear was turning. Marcus finalized the evidence file, Gerald's affidavit, Patricia Sloane's forensic report, the complete bank statements, the Hale Premier Properties LLC registration, and a printout of Victoria's browser search history recovered from the household iPad. All originals, all verified, sealed in a manila envelope. On June 10th, Marcus met with Judge Raymond Holt, the president of the Low Country Bar Association, who was personally overseeing the gala. Marcus presented the file. Judge Holt reviewed it for 45 minutes in his chambers, asked 3 clarifying questions, and then removed his reading glasses. "This is deeply serious," he said, "under Section 7.3 of our association bylaws. Any substantiated allegation of financial misconduct must be addressed before an honorific is conferred. I'll make the arrangements." Victoria didn't know. She was too busy choosing between diamond studs and chandelier earrings. On June 12th, she saw me talking on the phone in the garden and stopped. "Who was that?" "Spa," I said, "booking a blowout for the gala." She looked me over. "Don't go overboard. That night is mine." Then, on the evening of June 13th, one day before the gala, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "I know Victoria isn't who you think she is. Meet me at Waterfront Park, 3 p.m. tomorrow." HBHB. I stared at those 2 letters until the screen went dark. I almost didn't go. The gala was hours away, and the last thing I needed was a distraction from a stranger with cryptic initials. But something about the certainty in that message, "I know Victoria isn't who you think she is," told me this person had been waiting a long time to say it. Waterfront Park, 3 p.m., June 13th. The sun was brutal, the kind of Charleston afternoon that makes the air shimmer above the pavement. I sat on a bench near the pineapple fountain and watched a woman approach. Tall, silver-haired, somewhere in her early 60s, wearing a pressed linen blazer despite the heat. She walked like someone who had rehearsed being calm. "Bonnie Beckett?" She extended her hand. "My name is Helen Briggs." HB Helen sat beside me and told me a story I'd never heard, one Victoria had buried so deep that even Google couldn't find it easily. Before Gerald, before Charleston, before the Hale Beckett Foundation and the philanthropist persona, Victoria had been married to a man named Richard Briggs, a successful dentist in Savannah. They wed in 2005. By 2009, it was over. After Richard discovered that Victoria had quietly transferred $190,000 from their joint accounts into a personal savings account she'd opened under her maiden name. "He didn't press charges," Helen said. "He wanted a clean divorce, wanted to forget. I respected that for 16 years. But I saw your name in a blog post by Della Fairchild, something about women in Charleston consulting, and I recognized you, Gerald Beckett's daughter." She looked at me steadily. "Victoria has a pattern, Bonnie. She finds men who are successful but trusting, takes control of the finances, and bleeds them dry. Your father is not her first victim." Helen handed me a manila folder, a certified copy of the divorce decree, Briggs v. Hale, 2009, with the phrase "dissipation of marital assets" highlighted in yellow. 2 husbands, 2 sets of stolen funds, the same playbook, 16 years apart. "I stayed quiet because I was ashamed," Helen said. "If I can help your father, I will." I thanked her. And I called Marcus before I even reached my car. The night of June 13th settled over the beach house like a held breath. Victoria was in the master bedroom, rehearsing her speech one last time. Through the door, I could hear the cadence of her voice rising and falling, grateful, humble, rehearsed to perfection. In the next room, Paige was arranging jewelry on the dresser, holding up earrings to her reflection, completely unaware that by tomorrow night, every piece of the life her mother had constructed would be scattered across a ballroom floor. My father knocked on my door at 10 o'clock. His face was drawn, but his eyes were steady. The eyes of a man who had finally stopped looking away. He held a small wooden box, walnut, with a tarnished brass clasp. "I found this," he said quietly, in the locked drawer of Victoria's nightstand. "She was at the spa this afternoon. I wasn't looking for it. I was looking for my reading glasses." He opened the box. Inside were 2 handwritten pages, folded once, the paper yellowed at the edges. My mother's handwriting. I knew it instantly. The looping lowercase y. The way she crossed her T's with a slight upward slant, as if every word was reaching for something better. The letter was dated 3 days before she died. "Bonnie, my brave girl. You don't need anyone's permission to live your life. You are enough. You have always been enough. Don't ever let anyone make you doubt that." Victoria had kept this letter hidden for 17 years. My mother's last words to me, sealed in a box, locked in a drawer, in the bedroom of the woman who had spent a decade and a half telling me I was nothing. My father and I sat together in my small room and cried without speaking. When I could breathe again, I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my purse, the one I'd carry tomorrow. "I won't let her down, Dad." Before I turned off the light, I passed the hallway that led to the porch. Victoria's silhouette was framed against the moonlit ocean, phone pressed to her ear. I stopped. Her voice drifted through the screen door. "Don't worry. After the gala, I'll have them transfer the deed. She won't even notice until it's done." She was talking about my house. The house I'd bought with 12 years of invisible labor, and she was planning to take it the moment her trophy was in hand. I went to bed. I set my alarm for 6 a.m., and for the first time in 84 days, I slept soundly. June 14th, 2025. The morning arrived bright and still, the kind of low-humidity Charleston day that makes everything look sharper than it has any right to be. At 8 a.m., I was in Marcus Trent's office, a glass-walled suite on the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse on East Bay Street. The manila envelope sat between us on his desk like a loaded weapon laid flat. We reviewed the contents one final time, the forged transfer deed with Patricia Sloane's forensic report, number PS202500087, the Coastal Heritage Bank statements for all 3 accounts, Gerald's notarized affidavit, signed and witnessed on June 3rd, the Hale Premier Properties LLC registration, the divorce decree from Briggs vs. Hale, 2009, and a screenshot of Victoria's browser history. The search for how to add a name to a property deed in South Carolina. Time-stamped, device identified, saved to PDF. "Helen Briggs confirmed this morning," Marcus said. "She purchased a ticket through Della, table 12. She's ready." At 10 o'clock, Marcus met Judge Holt at the courthouse for a final briefing. The judge had already informed the gala's organizing committee. The Philanthropist of the Year award would be paused before presentation, pending a matter related to the nominee that requires the association's attention. The committee agreed, reluctantly, but unanimously. No one in Charleston's legal elite wanted their signature award tainted by unexamined fraud. Victoria, meanwhile, spent the morning in a state of radiant oblivion. She emerged from the master bedroom at 2 o'clock in her champagne gown, hair swept into a high chignon, diamond pendant catching the light. She surveyed me in my simple black dress and pearl earrings the way a queen surveys a chambermaid. "At least try to look like you belong there, Bonnie." I met her gaze. "Don't worry, Victoria. Tonight, everyone will know exactly where I belong." She frowned, a brief crease between perfectly filled brows, but she was already checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. She had bigger things on her mind. Or so she thought. The grand ballroom of the Belmont Charleston Place was the kind of room designed to make ordinary people feel extraordinary, and extraordinary people feel immortal. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars, floor-to-ceiling windows draped in ivory silk. Round tables set with bone china and sterling flatware, each one anchored by a centerpiece of white peonies and flickering votives. 220 guests, attorneys, circuit court judges, state legislators, founders of nonprofits, real estate developers, and the social columnists who chronicled their every handshake. Black tie, impeccable manners. In a room like this, reputation wasn't just currency, it was oxygen. Victoria moved through the crowd as though the evening had been choreographed around her. She kissed cheeks. She clasped hands. She leaned in close to whisper things that made powerful people laugh. At one point, I watched her rest her palm on Judge Holt's forearm and say, with the kind of sincerity that only a lifetime of practice can produce, "I'm so humbled by this honor, Raymond. Truly." She sat at table 1, the VIP position, directly before the stage. Gerald was beside her, his posture rigid, his water glass untouched. He hadn't looked at Victoria since they'd arrived. She hadn't noticed. I was at table 18, near the service entrance, the table Victoria had assigned me. Marcus sat to my left, his briefcase tucked beneath his chair. At table 12, I could see Helen Briggs, silver hair, linen blazer, watching the room with the patience of someone who'd waited 16 years for this evening. In the press section, Della Fairchild adjusted her recorder and opened a fresh page in her notebook. At 8:30, the MC tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we move to the evening's awards presentation, the association has a brief announcement." Victoria straightened in her chair. She smoothed her gown. She smiled, the generous, camera-ready smile she'd been rehearsing in mirrors for weeks. Then Judge Raymond Holt rose from his seat, walked to the podium, and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I regret to inform you that we have received information requiring our attention before we proceed this evening." 220 pairs of eyes turned to the stage. Victoria's smile didn't falter. Not yet. But I saw her fingers tighten around her napkin. Judge Holt's voice carried through the ballroom with the measured gravity of a man who had spent 30 years on the bench. Under Section 7.3 of the Low Country Bar Association's bylaws, any substantiated allegation of financial misconduct involving a nominee must be addressed before an award of honor is conferred. This evening, we have received a formally documented complaint, supported by forensic evidence, sworn testimony, and independently verified financial records. He paused. The complaint was filed by a member of the nominee's own family. A murmur rippled through the tables, the quiet, involuntary sound of 220 people recalibrating their expectations simultaneously. Victoria was on her feet before Judge Holt finished. "This is absurd," she said, her voice pitched perfectly between outrage and bewilderment, the voice of a woman who'd spent decades controlling rooms. "Raymond, who filed this? This is a charity event, not a courtroom." Judge Holt looked directly at me. "Ms. Bonnie Beckett, you've been invited to present your evidence." The murmur became a wave. Heads turned. Victoria's eyes found me at table 18, the back of the room, exactly where she'd put me. And for one long, suspended second, we looked at each other across 17 tables, 220 witnesses, and 15 years of silence. I stood. I picked up the manila envelope. And I walked. 17 tables. Each step deliberate, each step audible on the polished hardwood. I could feel the weight of every gaze in the room, could hear the rustle of evening gowns as women turned in their chairs, the clink of a water glass. Someone sat down too hard. "Gerald." Victoria's voice cracked the silence like a struck match. "Do something. She's trying to ruin me." My father sat still. His hands were folded on the table. He did not look at his wife. I stepped onto the stage. 220 faces stared up at me. The chandelier light was warm and merciless. I set the envelope on the podium, leaned into the microphone, and took one long breath. "I didn't come here to destroy anyone," I said. "I came here because the truth couldn't wait one more day." I opened the envelope and removed the first document. On April 12, 2024, a transfer deed was filed in Charleston County conveying ownership of the Beckett family home in Mount Pleasant, assessed value $1.2 million, to a limited liability company called Hale Premier Properties. I held the deed up. The projection screen behind me lit up with a high-resolution scan, the county seal, the legal description, and at the bottom, a signature reading Gerald A. Beckett. This signature is not my father's. I advanced to the next slide, a side-by-side comparison. On the left, the deed signature. On the right, Gerald's authentic signature from his will, his medical power of attorney, and a notarized affidavit signed on June 3rd of this year. The differences were visible from the back of the room: the missing loop on the capital G, the inconsistent pen pressure, the mechanical quality of a hand that was copying rather than writing. This analysis was conducted by Patricia Sloan, a forensic document examiner accredited by the American Board of Forensic Document Examiners with testimony in over 40 federal proceedings. Her conclusion, stated in Report PS2-02-50087, the signature is a simulated forgery at the highest probability level recognized in the field. The ballroom was silent, not the polite silence of a formal event. The airless silence of a room that has collectively stopped breathing. My father rose from table 1. His voice was hoarse but clear. I did not sign that document. I did not know that company existed. And I did not authorize the transfer of my home. Victoria gripped the edge of the table. Gerald, tell them you signed it. Tell them. He looked at her for the first time that evening. Then he slowly shook his head. Somewhere at table 5, a man set his fork down on his plate. The tiny clink rang out like a gavel. I pulled the second set of documents from the envelope. Between January and October 2024, 4 withdrawals totaling $380,000 were made from Gerald Beckett's individual retirement account and deposited into a savings account at Coastal Heritage Bank. The next slide appeared: redacted bank statements with the routing numbers, dates, and amounts highlighted. The account is registered under the name V. Hale. I heard a chair scrape. Someone at table 9 whispered something to the person beside them. Additionally, a supplementary credit card was opened using Gerald Beckett's Social Security number, without his knowledge or consent. Current balance: $47,000. Charges include luxury travel, designer purchases, and personal spa treatments, none of which appear in Gerald's personal records. The third slide, a separate savings account titled V. Hale Trust, holds $215,000 transferred from the Beckett's joint household checking account, disguised as routine household expenses. I set the statements on the podium. The total amount diverted from my father's assets without his knowledge or authorization is approximately $1.842 million. Under South Carolina Code Section 433510, the financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, my father is 63 years old with a documented cardiac history, is a felony. Victoria turned to the room. The tears came immediately, glistening, perfectly timed, rolling down cheeks that hadn't creased with genuine emotion in years. She's lying. Her voice broke with practiced fragility. Gerald gave me access to everything. This is a family misunderstanding, not a criminal matter. How dare you turn a charity dinner into a public trial? Judge Holt spoke from his seat, his voice level as a plumb line. Ms. Hale Beckett, the evidence has been independently verified. The association is revoking the Philanthropist of the Year award, effective immediately. Victoria's mouth opened. No sound came out. Then, from table 12, a woman stood up. Helen Briggs rose with the quiet composure of a woman who had spent 16 years rehearsing this moment in her mind. "My name is Helen Briggs," she said, her voice carrying across the ballroom with the clarity of someone who has finally decided to stop whispering. "Victoria Hale was previously married to my ex-husband, Richard Briggs, a dentist in Savannah. They married in 2005. The marriage ended in 2009. After Richard discovered that Victoria had transferred $190,000 from their joint accounts into a personal account under her maiden name." She held up a bound document. "This is a certified copy of the divorce decree, Briggs v. Hale, Chatham County Superior Court, 2009. The ruling specifically cites dissipation of marital assets. She passed the decree to Judge Holt, who accepted it without a word. The murmur that had been building in the room broke like a wave. 220 people began talking at once, at first in whispers, then in full voices. I saw a woman at table 7 cover her mouth. 2 attorneys at table 3 leaned toward each other with expressions I recognized from every boardroom I'd ever worked in. The look of professionals who have just realized they were standing next to a bomb. Victoria stood frozen between the VIP table and the aisle, her champagne gown catching the chandelier light. Paige sat beside the empty chair, tears streaming down her face, her hands clenched in her lap. She didn't look at her mother. She looked at the tablecloth. My father stepped away from the VIP table and walked toward me. He climbed the 2 short stairs to the stage and stood beside me at the podium. He didn't take the microphone. He didn't need to. Gerald Beckett, standing next to his daughter, facing the room, said everything that words could not. Victoria looked at us, then at the 220 faces that had, until 10 minutes ago, admired her. Not one of them met her gaze. She picked up her clutch. She walked to the exit. The sound of her champagne heels striking the marble floor echoed through the ballroom long after the door closed behind her. No one followed. For a few seconds after the door closed, the ballroom held its breath. Then Judge Holt returned to the podium. The Philanthropist of the Year Award for 2025 will not be conferred this evening, he said. The Low Country Bar Association will initiate a full audit of all donations received through the Hale Beckett Foundation. We ask for your patience and discretion as this matter proceeds through the appropriate legal channels. He stepped back from the microphone. The room exhaled. What happened next I did not expect. A man at table 3, tall, silver-templed, with the bearing of someone who owned the building he worked in, stood and crossed the ballroom toward me. Douglas Wren, founding partner of Wren and Partners, one of the most respected litigation firms in the Carolinas. He shook my hand. You presented that more clearly than half the attorneys I've hired in 20 years. If your father needs legal representation for the divorce or the criminal referral, here's my card. He pressed it into my palm. Pro bono. Behind him, Della Fairchild caught my eye from the press section. She nodded once. The kind of nod that means I have everything I need. I returned to the microphone one final time. The room quieted again. I didn't come here tonight to tear someone down, I said. I came because my father deserved to know the truth. Because silence isn't loyalty, it's surrender. And because no one in this room or anywhere else should have to trade their dignity for the appearance of family harmony. The applause began at table 12, Helen, steady and certain. It rippled outward through the room, not thunderous, not jubilant, but deliberate. The sound of 220 people offering something rarer than praise. Respect. My father took my arm as we descended the stage steps. His grip was firm. His eyes were clear. And for the first time in 15 years, we walked out of a room together. The drive back to Sullivan's Island took 23 minutes. My father sat in the passenger seat and didn't speak for the first 20. Then, somewhere on the bridge over the Intracoastal Waterway, with the marsh stretching out black and endless on either side, he said, "I'll file for divorce Monday." I didn't argue. I didn't comfort. I just reached over and squeezed his hand. When we pulled into the driveway, the house was dark. Victoria's things were still there. The garment bags, the monogrammed towels, the decorative pillows she'd chosen for my living room. But she was not. She'd apparently taken an Uber from the hotel. Where she went, I didn't know. I didn't look. Gerald's phone buzzed 14 times between 11 p.m. and 2 in the morning. I know because I could hear it vibrating through the guest room wall. He showed me the messages the next morning. "Gerald, please, I can explain. Don't do this to our family. Then, you're making a mistake. Then, this is all Bonnie's fault. She manipulated you." And the last one, at 1:47 a.m., "You'll regret this." Paige called me at 11:30 that night. She was crying. The ugly, raw kind of crying that strips away every performance. "Why did you do this? She's my mother." "I know she is. I said. And I'm sorry you're in pain. But she stole nearly $2 million from my father, Paige. She forged his name. She was planning to take my house next. I didn't have another option. The line went quiet. Then, very softly, I know. After we hung up, I sat on the porch in the dark. The ocean was louder at night. Or maybe I was just finally quiet enough to hear it. I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow. The way you feel when someone removes something that's been growing inside you for years. It hurts. But you're lighter. Gerald came out and sat in the chair beside me. He placed my mother's letter on the armrest between us. "Keep it," he said. "It was always yours?" Victoria's final message, "You'll regret this," wasn't an empty threat. It was a press release. By 9 a.m. on June 15th, the Low Country Daily Buzz, a local tabloid site with about 40,000 followers, ran a headline that made my stomach clench. Local philanthropist claims stepdaughter orchestrated public humiliation at charity gala. The article was built almost entirely on Victoria's interview. Tears, trembling voice, the full performance. She called me troubled. She called the gala reveal a vindictive ambush by a jealous stepdaughter who never accepted me. She said Gerald was confused and manipulated. The comments section split immediately. A disturbing number of people believed her. That poor woman was blindsided. No family business should be aired in public. Bonnie Beckett should be ashamed. I sat at the kitchen counter reading those words and felt a familiar ache. The people-pleasing instinct reaching up from somewhere deep, whispering that maybe I'd gone too far. Maybe I should have handled it privately. Maybe I should apologize. I called Marcus. He didn't let me finish the sentence. Don't respond, don't post, don't call anyone. Della's piece goes live tonight. The facts will do the work. 2 hate emails arrived that afternoon, from women in Victoria's social circle, both of whom had been dinner guests at my own table in my own house, drinking my wine. One wrote, "You should be ashamed of yourself. Victoria has given more to this community than you ever will." The other simply wrote, "Karma is real, Bonnie." I thought about that word. Karma. I thought about Victoria forging my father's name, draining his retirement, hiding my mother's last letter in a locked drawer for 17 years, and still managing to make half the internet feel sorry for her. I wondered, have you ever been in a situation where you knew you did the right thing, but the world made you feel like a villain for it? If you have, tell me in the comments. Because that afternoon, I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy. Then, at 6 o'clock, my phone lit up with a push notification from the Charleston Society Review. Breaking full evidence of financial fraud by Victoria Hale Beckett. Sources confirmed. Della kept her word. Della Fairchild's article was 3,200 words of surgical journalism. No speculation, no adjectives, just evidence stacked like bricks. She published the forged deed alongside Patricia Sloan's forensic analysis. She printed the bank statements with the routing numbers redacted, but the amounts and account names intact. She quoted Judge Holt on the record. The evidence presented was sufficient to warrant immediate revocation of the award and referral to appropriate authorities. She included a full timeline of Victoria's financial activity, the LLC registration in 2022, the IRA withdrawals through 2024, the credit card opened without Gerald's knowledge, and she laid the Briggs divorce decree beside it like a mirror. The headline alone was enough: "The Philanthropist Who Stole. Inside Victoria Hale Beckett's Double Life." Within 12 hours, the article hit 127,000 views, 4,800 shares, 1,200 comments. The top-rated one, from a reader in Somerville, read, "This woman had a pattern. Gerald Beckett is lucky his daughter saved him." The Low Country Daily Buzz, the same outlet that had run Victoria's teary interview that morning, published a retraction by midnight. "We apologize for our earlier one-sided reporting and encourage readers to review the full evidence published by the Charleston Society Review." The Low Country Bar Association released a formal statement the following morning. The 2025 Philanthropist of the Year Award has been permanently rescinded. The Hale Beckett Foundation's partnership status has been suspended pending a comprehensive financial audit. Within 48 hours, 3 of the foundation's largest corporate sponsors, a regional bank, a luxury car dealership, and a hospitality group, withdrew their pledges. Combined value, $420,000. Victoria's publicist released a 2-sentence statement on her behalf. Mrs. Hale Beckett categorically denies all allegations and looks forward to clearing her name through the legal process. No one quoted it. The news cycle had already moved on, but not in the direction Victoria wanted. On Monday, June 16th, my father walked into the Charleston County Family Court at 9:15 a.m., wearing a navy suit and the expression of a man who had just woken up after a very long sleep. He filed for divorce. Grounds: fraud upon the marriage and dissipation of marital assets. The petition was 14 pages long, prepared by Marcus Trent over the preceding 2 weeks, and it cited every document, every account, and every forged signature we'd uncovered. That same afternoon, Marcus drove to the Charleston County Sheriff's Office and filed a formal criminal complaint. The charges he recommended were precise: forgery in the first degree under South Carolina Code Section 1613-10. Exploitation of a vulnerable adult under Section 4335-10. Identity fraud for the unauthorized credit card. Each one a felony. Each one carrying potential prison time measured in years, not months. The sheriff's office opened an investigation immediately. Victoria was instructed to present herself within 72 hours. By Wednesday, she had hired Nathan Pratt, a well-known Charleston criminal defense attorney. Pratt's first move was a phone call to Marcus, proposing a settlement. Return the money, close the accounts, drop the charges, and everyone walks away quietly. Marcus relayed the offer. I didn't need 30 seconds. No settlement, I said. My father is entitled to the full protection of the law, not a handshake in a conference room. By the end of that week, Coastal Heritage Bank had frozen both the V. Hale savings account and the V. Hale Trust, a combined $595,000, locked until the investigation concluded. Paige called me that Thursday, her second call since the gala. Her voice was calmer this time, quieter. Can we talk? She asked. Not as enemies. I never thought of you as my enemy, Paige, I said. But you need to decide where you stand. I can't do that for you. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I know. The final number arrived on July 2nd. The Low Country Bar Association's emergency audit of the Hale Beckett Foundation uncovered what Marcus had suspected from the beginning. The rot went deeper than the personal accounts. $85,000 in charitable donations had been reclassified through a series of internal transfers and quietly redirected toward Victoria's personal expenses. Event planning invoices that turned out to be catering for her private dinner parties, administrative costs that matched the exact amount of her monthly spa membership, and a $10,000 consulting fee paid to Hale Premier Properties, LLC, the same shell company used to steal my father's house. The revised total, $1.927 million. On that same day, the Charleston County Grand Jury returned a formal indictment, 4 felony counts: forgery in the first degree, exploitation of a vulnerable adult, identity fraud, misappropriation of charitable funds. Victoria surrendered herself at the county courthouse, posted $75,000 bail, and was released with a GPS ankle monitor and a court order prohibiting contact with Gerald Beckett. The restraining order was granted the same afternoon, 200 feet, no exceptions. Della Fairchild published a follow-up. The Post and Courier, South Carolina's largest daily newspaper, picked up the story. So did the Charleston City paper. Conservative estimates place the combined readership at over 500,000. On social media, the hashtag Hale Beckett fraud trended regionally for 3 days. Victoria's name, once synonymous with charity luncheons and society page features, now returned only one kind of search result. Her defense attorney, Nathan Pratt, floated the idea of a countersuit. Defamation against me. Marcus's response was a single sentence in an email. Every statement made at the gala was supported by independently verified evidence reviewed in advance by a sitting judge. We welcome the discovery process. The countersuit was never filed. In the first week of July, after the indictment and the restraining order and the newspaper headlines had all settled into a kind of exhausted stillness, I sat down with my father on the porch of the beach house. The same porch, the same chairs. But nothing else was the same. "Dad," I said, "I love you. I need you to hear that first, because what I'm about to say might not sound like love, but it is." He nodded. He was listening, really listening, maybe for the first time in years. "I'm not going back to being the version of me that made everyone comfortable. I spent 15 years being the quiet one, the accommodating one, the daughter who never complained because she didn't want to make trouble. That's over. If we're going to have a relationship, a real one, it has to be built on honesty. You tell me the truth. I tell you the truth. And neither of us lets anyone else rewrite the story." His eyes glistened, but he didn't look away. "I'm going to start seeing someone," he said. "A therapist. I need to understand how I let this happen, how I let someone stand between me and my own daughter for 15 years without seeing it. That's all I'm asking." That evening, I wrote an email to Paige. I kept it short and clear. "I don't hate you. I never did. But I need you to understand that what your mother did was criminal, not a misunderstanding, not a family squabble. If you want to build something real between us, it starts with acknowledging that. I'm not asking you to choose sides. I'm asking you to choose honesty." I also made a phone call I'd been postponing. To Dr. Elaine Marsh, a licensed clinical social worker specializing in family trauma. My first appointment was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Setting boundaries, it turns out, isn't a single dramatic moment on a stage. It's a series of quiet decisions made in ordinary rooms, and the hardest boundary to enforce is the one you set with yourself. The letter arrived in mid-July. Not an email, not a text, but 3 handwritten pages in a cream-colored envelope with no return address. I recognized Paige's handwriting immediately. She still dotted her I's with tiny circles, the way she had when she was 14 and I was 21, and we'd briefly, before Victoria made it clear that closeness between us was unacceptable, been something like friends. She wrote, "Bonnie, I've been crying for 3 weeks. Not because my mother was arrested, because I finally realized what I've known for 15 years and refused to say out loud. I watched her treat you like you didn't exist. I watched her take your bedroom, your holidays, your place in family photos. I watched her call you the leftover at a dinner party, and I laughed along because it was easier than defending you. I was comfortable, and comfort made me complicit. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I haven't earned that. I'm writing because you deserve to hear someone in this family say, 'I saw it. It was wrong. And I did nothing. I've started seeing a therapist. I want to be someone who tells the truth, even when it costs me something. If you're willing, I'd like to try to know you. Not as stepsisters who tolerate each other, but as 2 adults who choose honesty over convenience.'" I read the letter twice. The second time, I cried. She had also included something I hadn't expected, a confession. Victoria had told Paige years ago that I'd received a large inheritance from my mother and refused to share it with the family. "That's why she doesn't come to holidays," Victoria had said. "She thinks she's better than us." It was, of course, completely fabricated. My mother left no money. She left a letter, and even that had been stolen. I wrote back, "I appreciate your courage, Paige. Let's start slow." We met at a coffee shop on King Street at the end of July. We talked for 3 hours. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't polished. But it was the most honest conversation I'd ever had with anyone who shared my last name. December 2025, 6 months later. I'm sitting on the porch of the Sullivan's Island house, the same spot where this whole story began with a glass of wine and a phone call at 11:47 p.m. The waves sound the same. The salt air tastes the same, but I am not the same woman who sat here in March. My father lives in the guest cottage now, 50 steps from the main house. He finalized his divorce in October. The settlement restored every stolen dollar to his accounts, or at least the dollars that could be recovered. He sees his therapist every Thursday. His cardiologist says his numbers are better than they've been in 3 years. Last Tuesday, he made dinner for the two of us. The first time he'd cooked since my mother was alive. It was terrible. I ate every bite. I went back to work, but not to Meridian. I founded Beckett Advisory Group, a solo strategic consulting practice based out of a small office on East Bay Street. My first 3 clients included Douglas Wren's firm, the man who shook my hand at the gala and offered his card. Revenue in the first quarter exceeded my projections by 14%. Victoria's trial is scheduled for March 2026. 4 felony counts. If convicted, she faces 5 to 15 years. I don't think about it as much as I used to. Paige visits the island once a month. We're not close, not yet. But we're honest. And that's worth more. Della Fairchild's follow-up article, Bonnie Beckett, the woman who chose truth over silence, was republished by Forbes Women in their Fall Voices column. I didn't read it for 2 weeks. When I finally did, I read it beside my mother's letter. The last line my mother ever wrote to me was this: "You are enough, always." Every morning I open that letter. Every morning I sit on this porch and watch the Atlantic stretch out toward the horizon. And every morning I know something I didn't know a year ago. I'm here because I chose to be. Not because someone permitted it. Not because I earned the right by silence. Because I am enough. I always was. If you stayed until the end of this story, thank you. Truly. This wasn't about revenge. It was about the moment you stop shrinking so that someone else can feel tall. If you're in a relationship where you've been making yourself smaller, in your family, at work, anywhere, I hope you heard something tonight that reminded you, your boundaries are not selfish. They are survival. Hit subscribe if you want more stories like this one, and check the description. There's another story there that I think you'll see yourself in. I'll see you in the next one.